All right, risk disclosure. Trading the foreign exchange market carries high risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Trading on margin and utilizing leverage can carry an even higher level of risk that can lead to a complete loss of investment funds. So I think it's important, obviously, to run demos, take a look at what's most important, preserving capital, especially in times of craziness. Auvoria Prime does not have any recommended settings. If you are sharing any results using Alexander, Iris, or Einstein, which is really only allowed in the designated Facebook groups, please do not use the term company recommended settings. Okay, so for these three pieces of software, Alexander and Einstein are the same thing, but if you are a US resident, you can use Alexander only because you must approve the trades first. It cannot go off in a semi-automated fashion like Einstein. So Auvoria Prime is not a financial advisory firm. We license software that users can use however they want at their own risk and discretion. Software does come with default settings, which I'll show today upon initial setup, which our users have the ability to customize their settings however they want. Auvoria Prime has nothing to do with the customer's brokerage account. We don't solicit or take investments. We don't recommend any brokers. We just sell amazing education, like myself, Daisy Duncan, Susan, Sema, and all the guys at Hawkeye, which I highly recommend going. Their stuff has been going quite well from a manual trading perspective. Check them out. Early mornings, East Coast time. So the company recommended settings are just essentially mine and some of the other developers, along with some of the other team leaders and the guys in R&D like Tyler and company that have recommended and gone through exhaustive amounts of data in order to fine tune, I guess, for lack of a better term, these settings. So let's go ahead and share the Forex calendar. I don't know if you guys want to see the poll results. There you go. Looks like only one person blew out his account, so it's good to see. Statistically, I like that. So we've had some ups and some downs. We've had some volatility in the marketplace. And more importantly, let's talk about the upcoming week. So I try to take the first part of these calls to just go over what's going on in the marketplace, what's changing, just general trends along not only currencies but equities and how that may spill over into one way or the other, the US dollar, which I've been highly suggesting that we take a look at. So as you can see on the screen, the Forex Factory calendar, week is August 16th to the 22nd. We really have no meetings to a large degree of anything next week, which probably seems strange for some. But we're towards the end of the summer, and I guess usually wherever you are globally, students looking to go back to school, and families take a lot of vacations in August, and they certainly do here in the U.S. So for those trading oil, I definitely would stay away from these OPEC meetings because it could certainly be going crazy. Oil's been trending for a period of time after it hit, virtually a zero print. That's back up to around 40 a barrel. We probably will see some volatility, and if they're trading oil, I probably would highly suggest not doing it on Wednesday. Outside of that, again, just looking at a quick shot for the US dollar. This is the DXY chart on TradingView. As you guys can see, we've had an exceptionally protracted move from the 97 era all the way down to 93-ish, and we've been hovering around that point. As I said, we probably 2 weeks ago, after this type of move will begin to base now, essentially holding just under 92 and a half. Ultimately, I think this currency is going to 85, which is going to zoom up all of the other relateds to it. It's like GBP USD. Again, didn't do much last week. So Einstein has a little bit of a better chance, along with Alexander, if you're approving the trades, of doing better in a basing period of time, okay? So no changes in the settings other than a 500 pip stop loss. We moved it from 250 to 500. Okay, let's take a look at the euro. Again, not much going on. If the dollar does continue to break down past that 92.50 area down into maybe the next detractor, which is 85, I showed that extensively last week on the charts, it's going to send this currency higher. Plain and simple. So what will that mean for Einstein and Alexander? So right now, developers are trading next week Next 2 weeks, you'll see low news, hopefully, maybe with the exception of a coronavirus aid package number 2 for U.S. residents, which could further put pressure on the dollar, obviously, because as it moves through to a potential signing by the administration, that could put pressure on the U.S. dollar to drop further. Why? Because typically when countries take on large chunks of debt, it devalues their currencies, plain and simple, thus shooting up everything else, at least until the Eurozone comes out with package number whatever, and maybe that'll devalue the euro and send the U.S. dollar higher, right? So, but ideally for those taking trades from Alexander or Einstein, the whole idea behind this type of technical analysis and talking about news is just to give you a feel for where we have an idea the currencies could go. For those of you in GBP NZD land, looking at the 200-day, notice we touched and we had a little bit of a, just stretch this out, had a little bit of move above the 200-day, and it came right back down to it. So I don't read much into this currency, just want to touch briefly upon the different ones our different softwares trade. You guys could look on Jesse's channel, who's going to be contributing a lot less to his channel going forward. He's tied up with other things in terms of his own personal trading business. But he's got a ton of really good content that goes back on his channel in addition to mine. But what I would most focus on outside of your Alexander and Einstein and Iris software settings and forecasts we're going to talk about this week, I would definitely suggest watching that corporate update webinar from Auvoria Prime. Sal kicked it off, brought in Ryan Doktorzik, Tyler, brought in our overseas champion, Dominic, brought in a couple of other individuals to talk about the different softwares. So heavy emphasis on all four, getting the APIs built right now to have them integrated. Keep in mind, this is a major project to be able to do, so those subscribers can switch from software to software once per month, I'm understanding. That implementation takes some time, but the great thing about this software, especially from someone, as you guys know, that is the furthest from rah-rah at this firm that it gets, because I'm not an MLM guy. I'm basically just an analyst and a trader and a portfolio manager and all that fun stuff. From the advisory side, I will always be taking a look at this stuff from a risk management standpoint. So a lot of data has been thrown at us. It's been great. There has been some excellent performance of some of the MyFX books we'll share. I would highly suggest that in communication with your up and down lines, please do yourselves a favor and dial back the expectations of this software, right? I talk a lot about 1 to 2% a week, fantastic performance long term, okay? Communicate that with your group. Let me switch out here. And and I hadn't heard the note that Congress is in recess until Labor Day, which is true, but that does not mean that talks cannot continue, guys. So just remember that. Talks can always continue behind closed doors, even though the general session's in recess. All right, so let's take a quick look at S&P. Not much to speak of. Still flirting around with all-time highs here, just under the 3,400 level. This is the S&P 500, which is 500 of the largest U.S. stocks by capitalization. All right, so I think that's pretty much everything I want to talk about. Let's take a quick look at one of our accounts. It's actually done quite well. This is the different pair Einstein account. So this is not the typical USD, JPY, Euro ring that we talk about. This is an NZD, US, GBP, CAD ring. So it's a little bit outside of the box. This account's actually a good example of, even though it's in a little bit of drawdown right now, account that was up a little bit over 25%, untouched, high volatility settings, 250, which I think so the 250 pip stop loss that we had on the other accounts, this one's always been 400, okay? And right now it's in drawdown on a couple of currencies aren't quite at the 400 pip part, but this is one of the reasons we've upped the 250 if one can afford to cast a little more loss, if you will, or drawdown in the account in order for it not to stop itself out, which we've determined through the last few months of trades in our other accounts, which I'll show you here. So this is the account on my FX book. You can see the ring that it's running right here, Einstein. We've been running this for a little bit just after the start of June. As you can see, it's taken some hits along the way, and it's come back from those hits. Currently a little bit of a hit here. But this account's actually done pretty well. So, and you know, it doesn't have any JPY in it or any euro in it to sort of beat. But as you can see, it's fairly well diversified among the profits in here. So just showing you something different, just let you know that Einstein does work. And we've been showing this account since June. There's going to be periods that the account will have drawdown, but this is not being shown in any way to convince you to change your current ring of currencies from our main pair. Okay, so let's shift over to that account. Here is the big account denominated in euros. This one trades in the same three-ring pair we've been talking about since we started. There's the summary right here. You can see, notice that even though the hatred among some for the Euro JPY, notice it's actually turned in a profit, which has grown a little bit in the last couple of weeks. But obviously the US dollar Euro pair has overwhelmingly turned in most of the profits because it's a much more liquid currency. We're about 30% of the volume is executed on a weekly basis. So I've opened up the Q&A window. That's it for everything I want to comment on. I'm just going to go into, if you guys want to do a deeper dive. If you do want any discussions or at least a chat, if you will, about the different softwares, which I'm becoming much more familiar with now, I've requested some additional information. Let me know in the chat window or let me know inside the Q&A window. But let's put the questions in the Q&A window. So this is it for me as far as the weekly review. Kind of a quieter week, I expect. And since, I don't expect anything, at least from the U.S., to come over the next 2 weeks in terms of, who knows, we could be surprised. I've heard that Treasury, Steven Mnuchin, is still pushing to get something done even through recess. Who knows? But I think that's why we very well may see the U.S. dollar just level out over the next 2 weeks and continue to base in a tight range that it's in before potentially we see any breakouts to one way or the other. So that's typically good for a martingale strategy based Forex software, which is what Anson Alexander is. Right. Okay, the first question. I have opened trades with Euro US dollar. What is the best strategy for this case next week? Continue to let it play out, please, Elizabeth. So hopefully you guys see the link. Looks like I got a couple questions surrounding the link. Hi, Steve. Is Einstein fine-tuned for GBP, JPY, zigzag in a 4-hour time frame? Luke, I do not know the answer to that question. If you want to send me an email with why you have decided to look at that currency, I can tell you that particular currency has not come up in any of our long-term research, which Jesse was one of the authors of, in terms of the best grouping of trades being offered, not showing up from that. Can you show EJ, JJ, and GU? Yes. So I don't know if you caught that beginning of the call, Marty. Essentially, here is the Euro US dollar to start the, keep in mind this is a daily chart. Always look up here in the upper left-hand corner if you're on TradingView, which I would highly suggest setting up a subscription to. Starting things only $15 a month for the Junior Pro version, which I'm actually going to be upgrading to the, I guess, like a senior pro version because it has market profile. So you guys are in luck. For the more harder core traders and or manual trading folks in the call, I'm actually going to be introducing a brand new technical analysis concept for those who want to do a deeper dive. That'll obviously be later in the call, called market profile. It's the way to aggregate and put together both a volume and time-based profiles to understand better what's truly going on in the market from the standpoint of order flow. So it's where my expertise lies on the future side of the business. All right. Let's show. So here's USD JPY. Again, not a lot going on here. We'll just wait out the next 2 weeks. And then Euro JPY right here. Let's go to weekly chart on that. Take a quick look. See how we've just spent the first week bursting above the 200-day line. There is an argument, obviously, that this could push higher. So, and not a surprise really here, because obviously the euro's been lifting, right? US dollar's been selling off, and so forth. Let's take a look at the next question. The Einstein does work well when the market moves sideways, yes. Where Einstein doesn't work, or Alexander for that matter, is when the market's in a massive trend up or down, because it's essentially going against the trend with some of the sequence. And Ryan asks, what is your Euro JPY analysis? It has gone about 400 pips north and in heavy drawdown with it now. Yeah, but this is why we've changed those stop losses up to 500 on the main ring that we're trading, essentially letting it cast a little bit of a broader net. Maryland's asking, hi Steve, can you show how to set the 200-day MA on TradingView? I think I'm seeing various indicators for it. I tell you what to do, Maryland. It's the you could just go up to the left-hand side. There's all kinds of stuff, and you can go up here and set layouts and add all kinds of indicators from this drop-down window right here. It's best, though, I'm not going to get too detailed on this, but it's best if I were you guys. There's a whole mess of videos. I mean, the thing that just continues to make me laugh about this, and maybe this is a lot of known by some out here, is that, I mean, you've basically, with this software, 15 or 20 bucks a month, you have Bloomberg level charting capacity. I mean, it's crazy. And the fact that I'll be able to overlay volume profile and show you guys aggregated composite charts, it's just going to be bananas for 20 bucks a month. Gotta love it. Yeah, it's called tradingview.com. So I have nothing to do with the website. I just like it. I'm pretty new. What are your current settings for the EU? Okay, so let me show you our settings window. Pay close attention if your question is about this here. Let me get into the other one. So these are the high volatility settings that we have. Okay. We actually have it set on a trailing equity with a 3-2-1. Not sure if you've watched any of our past videos on that, but with the 3-2-1, you have the fixed weekly goal of 3%. But when you have trailing equity set, this is inoperable. But the 2, the 1, and the 2 below it, okay, these are all trail related windows you can adjust the settings to. So the cool thing about trailing equity is if the account goes up 2%, you have a security guard jump out, if you will, or a protecting factor, I like to call, that gets turned on live inside the account that protects that return that you've gone up to. So if this is set at 3% or 4, that's going to have to get to that level of going up in profit each week before that triggers and becomes live. And then you have a trail by number that is the fallback. So if it was up 2%, fell back to 1, it would close out of all your trades. You'd have a 1% profit a week in a perfect world. Okay. So sometimes it'll close it out, get a little bit of slippage on the execution of the trades, and maybe you'd be up, 0.99%, for the week. So ideally, that's what you want. My only concern I see from a lot of emails I've gotten over the last few months is people are shooting for much higher gains each week, which is fine. But just understand that's a more aggressive stance. If you decide to shoot for a higher gain, it may not get to that point, and it may come all the way back down from the gain you had and potentially take the account into drawdown. So the other thing I'm going to say for any notice, I've gotten a lot less drawdown questions. So it looks like everything's starting to sink in for some of our more senior folks, which is great. In that, honestly, guys, I can give you the strategy and tell you what's going on each week, and kind of set some forecasting for the different markets, and maybe we'll do a little deeper dive in understanding correlations, how one market moves the other type stuff. But at the end of the day, you notice I'm not smart enough to step in front of the software and start cutting sequences off. And tinkering around with the trading so that we can get out of drawdown faster, right? So the most important thing anybody can take from my calls, by far the most important thing, is do not put money to work that you cannot afford to lose. This is the single most important role that I play in this position. And yet, some people not have their team or downline working to listen to these calls, and they want to run their own settings. And when the account is in a super aggressive stance and you have an exceptionally protracted move like we saw down in the dollar or up with GBP, NZD, just terrorizing accounts, can't say I didn't warn you guys. So that's why I'm constantly on the podium here saying, get out the word to your team. So one of the great things I love about this position is some of the big team players from around the world, they'll ping me, they'll call me, whatever, and they want to know before this call, which is fine, just sort of the bottom line of what I see this week. And that way they can communicate to their team, get on and do this and that. If you cannot watch Steve's call live and or jump on the recordings. So those are the settings. The only thing that's different about the other ones for our Euro, JPY, USD ring is that this is set at 500 in terms of stop loss. Doesn't mean you have to move yours to 500. You can always keep it at 250. But with some of the bigger moves that we've seen in the last 6 months, related to Brexit, certainly the coronavirus has sent everything into a tailspin. Surprisingly enough, that this software has done as well as it has, especially if you've had the right settings in a conservative nature, which we call the high volatility settings, which essentially out of the box, you're flip-flopping these two numbers from the default settings right here, and then moving the stop loss to 500 pips. All right, so get rid of that. Okay, Damien asked a good question, actually. Is there anywhere you would recommend for us to start building an understanding for other financial markets? Okay, a ton of junk on the internet. Boy, you were absolutely right about that. Any specific person, book, podcasts, etc., to start learning other major markets outside of just Forex. So if you go to my Telegram channel, you'll see that, and just scroll up and down through the whole thing, I've made recommendations of books to start understanding. And I know this probably isn't the path that many people want to take. But the first thing I think anybody should do is read books on trading psychology. I know that seems like, why would you do that? But the academic, the mindset that's got to be framed in order to be successful at trading, I think is the first and foremost, because inside most of that psychology, which I'm going to be shooting a video on it if I can ever get this damn camera working, the mindset of profit and the mindset of drawdown is two of the most important things in risk management, being able to handle that. I've seen traders go out and just absolutely kill it, and you guys see all these crazy videos on YouTube, these guys buying Lambos and all, and most is just BS. But then they don't tell you is when, they took a $150,000 account they built and they blew the whole thing up in a week, right? So, and that's just poor lack of risk management. But as far as understanding the markets as a whole, best thing to do is just to go out there and look. I mean, I have a bazillion links. And if you want to just get a basic understanding, I would probably just pick up a book or go to Amazon and just look to see, the very basics of understanding. But on that education, I would always include a general understanding of what's called M1 through M3, which is money supply, and how that's affected in the markets in relation to central banks, governing bodies, executive, legislative, and judicial branches of governments. They can all affect that. So I still think the understanding of markets has to include, at the very minimum, a basic understanding of macroeconomics. Okay, so outside of forex, there's different ways you can do that. But inside forex, I would absolutely start with the Daisy Duncan's Basics Forex course, which is in the cloud. I got a couple of things to answer that question, Darren. I'll post on my trading channel. I don't know the answer to that question. Do you think U.S. dollar is already somewhat priced in the pending stimulus package? Yes, I do think that. Yeah, so Philip asks, I've been in an EU sell since July 20th. So we have a bunch of accounts that are still in some of those crazy trades from the 20th as well. So it's still holding out. The software has just not been willing to close it out. So again, I would not just close it out with a loss. I do not recommend that. Let it play out. How do you feel about adding USD CAD to the? Yeah, you're welcome to do it. The more diversification you have with currencies. I personally am just not a fan of USD CAD. Okay. Now here's USD CAD right here. The data just really isn't there as far as my opinion. The potential or the top, if you will, of currencies to offer trade setups, really. So a lot of these have been selected because of diversification, obviously, in trade setups. Who knows? That probably could change maybe in the next year. Just understand the reason we use in our more aggressive stuff, GBP NZD, is that it offers about 3 times the trade opportunities in a given year, depending on your settings. Yeah, I have not decided to change the range between levels to 25, because if it's in a week, I'll open up this screen here. If it's in a week where I don't expect any major trending, we have the range between levels default setting at 21. So moving it to 25 is just taking a more conservative stance. It's making it essentially more picky to take stuff that's a little further out. And this kind of plays a little bit into why one of the new pieces of software that's called Gearbox is being introduced, which is Tyler's baby. And Gearbox essentially allows you to change gears. You can have trades taken not in every particular level, but actually just switching gears or having it take trades at a much more pronounced or protruded level. And I talked a lot about this in the very beginning. It's nothing more than the more stretched the standard deviation of a trade, essentially a trade that's out at the extremes of movement, the retracement back inside, or the rubber band being unstretched, right? It's the concept of a mean reverting market. So this doesn't have to be hard to understand, and even though that may be confusing, it's just that when you have a market that's moved a bunch outside of the norm or outside of its normal range, it has a tendency to mean revert, meaning to snap back into or fall back into that range, or rally into that range if it's a short situation down. And that's kind of how a martingale strategy wants to take advantage of that. And that's why it puts on successively larger and larger trades. So when a snapback takes place, the movement of that 7th level sequence or 6th level is so dramatic in terms of profit that it clears all the other trades out, right? The problem is with Einstein and Alexander, and for that matter, the currency markets, some of these extremes, they've moved so much and they haven't mean reverted, right? And a lot of that's just due to this pandemic. So some of it you can be blamed on the current situation of the markets. If you want, you can leave the stop loss at 400 if you're trading this particular pair ring right here. We've moved the stop loss to 500. But just keep in mind, it's just going to keep the account in drawdown while it works its way out. Do understand, because a couple of questions I'm getting about the other softwares. So the other softwares, yes, they are. They run themselves. You know, I hesitate to say plug and play type thing. You still need to pay attention to what's going on with the other softwares, but they do require, with the exception of Gearbox, the other three, we do not have the ability to change the settings. So, which obviously makes my job a lot easier. But at the same time, that's good. Great. Okay, so here's a question from Alan. He's one of our big leaders. Hey, Alan. Hey, Steve, Alan here. I've been trading GBP NZD exclusively and have had excellent results, while others trading the same pair have had their accounts terrorized, as I say, which is quite true. I mean, we can look at Jesse's accounts for a great example of a exceptionally good trader, but he's been terrorized in some of his accounts. This isn't really a good question, but I'm able to accomplish my 2% weekly goal consistently now because I pay attention. Yes, that's true. And Alan, I wish I could cast a spell upon our entire subscriber base so that they will all join these calls every week, right? But the problem is a lot of people get tied up, and I get they got things going on and family and so forth, and hopefully it's not an illness. But I would try and really get the word out to join these calls, you know. And if you need to, just like we've done for guys on our team, you know, we've called out some areas of laziness among some of our team members who are just unwilling to join the call. So we give them some crap. But in any case, the next part of the question is so Alan is using low weekly goals and is willing to take a small loss if it looks like the market's going to turn. This has worked well for me, and he now has an $1,100 gain on a 3K account over the last 3 months. So, yeah, I mean, if you want, Alan, I'd be happy to show that. I'm going to maybe take over a little bit of the GBP NZD discussion from Jesse, because he's got other things to do. So if you want to share any of that stuff with me, that's fine. I'll start to talk a little bit more about it. But this is a great example of somebody that's just plugged in, and Alan's actually an expert in Forex. But the software does have the ability to do well in a very volatile currency if it takes a hypersensitive approach to paying attention to it. So the darn thing's up almost 30% for him, which is great. Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear your pain on that, Sean. Main problem's been unwilling to get out early with the 1 to 2% gains. And hey, I get it. The greed factor is an exceptionally powerful emotion in the human psyche, very powerful, and it can kill trading accounts. Okay, especially because of the greed factor. One of the pin action parts of it in some individuals' brains is the unwillingness to take a loss. Okay, so and this isn't necessarily the case for the purposes of our discussion with the software, but and this is really just applies to manual trading mostly. In manual trading, if the setup moves against you, the best traders will always cut their losses like right away, even though it's a couple of ticks. Maybe I'm talking about futures, a couple of ticks in loss. It can potentially avert, multiple points in loss against a movement on, something such as the S&P E-mini contract. All right, let me take a look at this. Good questions, guys. Hey, thank you. You're welcome. What are the levels measured? What are the levels measured in? Example, range between levels, max number of levels, and trending levels before hedging. Vlad, if you want, there's a whole explanation to that. I go into deep dive on my Telegram channel. Just scroll through, you can find it. Deep dive on an explanation of all that stuff. Don't know the answer to that question, Marty. Will you be able to use multiple software simultaneously? I don't think so to start. Okay, you're going to need to switch to something else. I think ideally, what I would like to see, I don't know if this is even something that's implementable with current coding technology, is to have a certain number paid each month, then access to 2 to 3 subscriptions, sort of like a multi-subscription discount. Okay, you keep in mind, guys, I don't pay attention to a lot of that. I'm not a developer from that end. That's Bill Wynn, our Chief Technology Officer's department, along with Omar and a lot of other developers that are doing work on that. My hat's off to these guys because they put some just tremendous work into this company that's barely over 120 days old. So it's great to see this kind of stuff, which is a big reason I'm sitting behind this mic. All right. People listen to the update call from Thursday. Sal did address the multiple licenses. Okay, so there you go. I listened to the corporate call on Thursday, which is 4 p.m. Eastern time, by the way, guys, 10 p.m. European time. We go through, it's almost a 40-minute call. Cool thing about this, and you guys, if you're driving around in a car anywhere, stuck in traffic or, whatever, these calls you can just listen to while you're in the car. In many cases, they don't really do a lot of video update. So I would absolutely, I'm going to probably listen to this now that I've got the link to it. I've got a pretty big drive, Newport Beach, on Monday. So I take out this and just listen to this over and over again, because I ideally want to get, we're going to get to know the developers. Dasan, he's the developer of Variable, and a couple of the other gentlemen we'll get to know. All right, so take a look at the next question here. We're coming up against my time slot of a golf game today, so let's end it here soon. Are you running 3 pairs? Are you running all 3? Yes, I am running all 3 pairs this week on the big account, which is our 25 euro account that I'm showing here. And then we have our, here's the 3K high volatility account. This thing's taking an absolute beating. And I think the problem mainly here in this account is I had too tight of a stop loss, and it took me out of too many trades, didn't give it a chance to climb out. But this account's definitely taking a beating. This is the main ring here. I'm just going to let this play out. No events to really speak of unless you're trading oil or you really want to be trading Friday during this European, the German PMI, which I would not suggest being trading on Friday unless you let the software run all the time, which is fine. Typically, those that tell me they let the software run all the time through all events. And by the way, the software is coming out. They trade, in some cases, a broader range of currencies. Some have been optimized for a lot of currencies. Some have been optimized for 7. These currency EAs that are coming out, these algos are actually going to be trading different times of the market. So I don't know if you guys understand, but the London session, which overlaps a little bit of the U.S. opening, and the Asian sessions, is one of the most liquid. It's also one of the most active times. The London session is the primary session, which is difficult for someone like myself on the West Coast, because I'd have to get up wicked early in order to be able to trade that time zone. I'd have to get like 3 a.m. To trade that. But the folks on the eastern part of the United States and or our friends in Europe have more of the luxury of regular hours to trade something like that instead of trading overnight. So I've never really traded it, honestly. I'm usually asleep at 3 a.m. All right. Yes, you're welcome. Thank you. Congrats. You had a 5% week last week. That's outstanding. So good job. Yes, look at that. It's because of your call, Steve, and my paying attention to the settings. Well, I can't be perfect, but thank you, Ken. All right, so if nobody's got any more questions, let's end it here. So today is the 15th, a little bit before 11 a.m. Pacific time. I am Steve Vettel. This is the Auvoria Prime Weekend Saturday call. I wish everybody health, happiness, and for gosh sakes, don't overwork yourselves. Go out and have a drink this weekend. I highly recommend it, and or a game of golf, or whatever interests you. But if you got any questions, you can always send me an email at svetterol@auvoriaprime.com. That email address is on my Telegram channel, which I highly suggest you subscribe to. I wish you guys a safe weekend, and may the trades be with you.